My name is Major Jordan Hale. I serve in the U.S. Army as a tactical operations specialist and digital intelligence lead. Right now, I'm sitting in a military courtroom, dressed in uniform, watching a man who once outranked me squirm in his seat. Colonel Shepard used to walk through our base like nothing could ever touch him. Today, he's under oath, facing a wall of evidence he didn't even know existed. In a few minutes, the monitor beside the judge will flicker on, and everything he tried to bury will rise to the surface in front of a silent, waiting room. The room smells like cold air and anxiety. There's no chatter, no shifting in chairs, just the weight of what's about to unfold. My palms are steady on the table, my mind sharp. I've waited for this not out of vengeance, but because truth deserves its moment, and I made sure this one would be impossible to ignore. To the rest of the room, this might look like a procedural hearing. To me, it's the culmination of months spent piecing together a story no one wanted to hear. I've been called quiet, methodical, even cold, but I don't need noise, I deal in proof. And what's about to play on that screen isn't a theory. It's a fact. This is not just about me or my rank. It's about what happens when someone misuses power and expects silence in return. I'm not here to ask for respect. I'm here to show what happens when you mistake discipline for weakness. The reckoning is already underway. The first night I came home from deployment, the house felt smaller. Not because it had changed, but because I had. My stepfather greeted me with a nod from behind his whiskey glass, and my stepbrother, Ryan, barely looked up from his phone. Dinner was already on the table. My stepmother had made her usual Sunday roast, and they all acted like I had just come back from a business trip, not a classified mission overseas. No one asked what I'd been doing or how it felt to live out of a rucksack for months under constant alerts. The conversation was light and familiar, centered around Ryan's promotion at his real estate firm. He spoke with exaggerated confidence, retelling a story about closing a difficult deal like he'd just led troops into battle. The room laughed easily, especially when he compared his client to a hostage situation. Then, as if on cue, the attention turned to me. Ryan smirked, fork dangling between his fingers, and said, "So Jordan, you still behind a desk pushing buttons? Or did they finally let you carry a real weapon?" I didn't flinch. I just met his eyes and gave a half smile. My stepfather chuckled and chimed in. "Back in my day, soldiers knew how to get their hands dirty. Now it's all keyboards and paperwork." My stepmother laughed too, her voice high and brittle, like she wasn't sure if she should, but didn't want to break the rhythm. It wasn't the first time they mocked what I did. To them, if it didn't involve boots on the ground or a rifle in hand, it wasn't soldiering. My work in digital operations meant nothing in their eyes. Never mind that my team had intercepted a live cyber attack that could have shut down entire power grids. I stared at my plate. Not because I was hurt. I was long past that. But because I knew anything I said would fall into the same silence that always followed. Explaining my role to them was like shouting into a vacuum. They didn't want to understand. They just needed something to diminish. Ryan leaned back and grinned. "Bet you get your own cubicle, huh? Maybe even a little nameplate." I could tell he was waiting for a reaction, something he could turn into a joke. I didn't give him one. I just picked up my water and took a sip. The room buzzed with low conversation, the way it always did when they'd had their fun and were ready to move on. My father never once looked up from his plate. That was the part that stung, if I let it. The way he avoided me. His indifference was a more effective weapon than any ridicule. Later that night, I stood on the back porch while the others watched TV. The sky was clear. Quiet. My phone buzzed in my pocket with an encrypted message from my unit. A debrief was scheduled for the next day. I smiled at the irony. Out there, I was respected, trusted with national secrets. In here, I was a joke, with a rank. I left the porch light off when I went back inside. I didn't need to be seen. Not by them. They could keep their small world. I had work that mattered. Work they would never understand. Inside the ops room, there's no space for ego or small talk. The air hums with quiet urgency, lit only by screens casting blue light across hardened faces. My team surrounds me, each one a specialist in tactical intelligence, signals analysis, or digital countermeasures. This is where I live, not in my childhood home or some nostalgic memory, but right here in a bunker beneath the surface, where data can mean life or death. I speak, and my team listens. Not out of fear, but out of trust earned over years of precision, clarity, and results. Today's mission is real-time threat interception. We're tracking a pattern of encoded signals originating from a compromised satellite link. My second-in-command flags a heat signature anomaly, and I'm already issuing protocols. My voice cuts through the room. Calm, exact. There's no hesitation here. My commanding officer, Colonel Reeves, steps in just as we finish. He doesn't say much, just a nod. That nod says everything. In this room, I'm not someone's daughter or the desk soldier. I'm Major Hale, mission lead. And nobody questions that. Here, I don't explain who I am. I show it. And in this world, that's enough. It started with a missing report. Then a late-night comms blackout that no one could fully explain. The patterns were subtle, but I knew what I was looking at. Something wasn't lining up, and the discrepancies were stacking fast. I dug deeper, comparing logistics manifests with field logs. There were gaps, inconsistencies that hinted at cover-ups or data manipulation. It wasn't proof, but it was smoke. And in my world, smoke meant fire. So, I did what protocol demanded. I flagged the anomalies and sent them up the chain. Colonel Shepard summoned me to his office the next morning. The blinds were half drawn, the light filtered and sharp across his desk. He didn't ask about my findings. He didn't even look at the report. He just sat back in his chair, staring like I was the problem. "Stay in your lane, soldier." The words landed like a slap. Sharp. Final. I'd been dismissed with a single sentence that wasn't just disrespectful. It was a warning. He didn't deny anything. He didn't ask questions. He just told me to shut up and go back to my screen. I walked out of his office with my hands clenched and my mind racing. That wasn't a misunderstanding. That was control. That was a man so used to power, he thought truth was optional. And just like that, I knew this wasn't just about protocol anymore. It was personal. He underestimated me. A common mistake. But what he didn't understand is that I never stay in a lane. I build new ones. I follow the data until it speaks. And this time, I was going to make sure it screamed. The day after Shepard shut me down, I started doing what I do best. I gathered facts. I studied the Uniform Code of Military Justice like it was a mission briefing, combing through articles on internal surveillance and consent in non-combat environments. I called my closest friend from the academy, now a legal advisor with the JAG Corps. She emphasized the need for absolute legal sanction. Working with her counsel, I ensured everything had to be clean, no shortcuts, no gray areas. If I was going to expose Shepard, I had to make sure my chain of evidence was bulletproof. I began logging incidents in a secure journal, time-stamped and locked under multi-factor encryption. Next came the hardware. I integrated a low-profile audio device into my comms unit, cleared through a specialized JAG counter-surveillance protocol, calibrated to trigger only when Shepard's voice patterns were detected. I tested it for days before going live. It blended seamlessly into our standard-issue gear. Invisible. Legal. Unmistakably precise. Any data I collected was backed up in 2 classified vaults, one on base, the other in a secure Pentagon mirror server. Each file is tagged, categorized, and isolated. Nothing was left to interpretation. No one would be able to say it was manipulated. No one would be able to dismiss it as a grudge or a mistake. At night, I reviewed hours of footage in silence. Not looking for drama, just confirmation. A phrase here, a gesture there. The quiet abuse of power is often subtle, but to someone trained in behavioral forensics, it's loud enough. Shepard thought I would fall in line. What he didn't realize is I had already drawn the line, and this time, I wasn't crossing it. I was documenting it. It was past midnight when I walked into the logistics wing. The lights were dimmed, but voices echoed from the supply office. I recognized Shepard's tone first. Calm, measured, but there was something sharp beneath it. A young private stood frozen, eyes wide, fingers shaking above a clipboard. Shepard stood close, too close, leaning in like a shadow swallowing light. "We just changed the count," he said. "You mark what I told you, not what you saw." The private didn't move. "Not right away." Shepard tilted his head and added, almost gently, "That's an order." It wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. The chill in his voice made my stomach turn. I watched from the hallway, heart pounding but footsteps silent. The private signed the sheet with a hand that barely worked. Shepard took the clipboard, nodded once, and walked out without another word. He didn't see me, but I saw enough. This wasn't pressure. It was coercion. This wasn't cutting corners. It was rewriting reality. In that moment, every line he'd crossed became visible. Every suspicion hardened into certainty. That single phrase echoed in my head for days. We just changed the count. Cold. Mechanical. Like it was nothing. Like soldiers were just pieces to be moved. Numbers to be fixed. Lives to be hidden behind paper. That was the moment I stopped collecting data. I started building a case. Because silence, from that point on, would have made me complicit. And I refused to be part of his lie. The courtroom was quiet. Too quiet. You could hear the shifting of a single chair, the scratch of a pen. Shepard walked in, like he owned the room. Crisp uniform, polished boots, that same practiced smile he used on recruits and reporters. He glanced at me once, the corner of his mouth twitching in what he probably thought was confidence. He took the stand with the ease of a man who'd done this before. Not defending himself, but performing. His voice was smooth, measured, full of vague patriotism and convenient amnesia. He spoke of service, sacrifice, leadership under pressure. Every word polished like a speech he'd rehearsed in the mirror. Behind me, I could hear my stepfather clearing his throat. My stepmother and Ryan were there, faces tight with a mixture of disbelief and misplaced loyalty. They sat stiffly, not daring to make noise, but their stares were loud enough. I didn't turn around. I sat still, hands folded, back straight. Not out of fear, out of discipline. I knew what was coming. They didn't. The evidence wasn't just damning. It was lethal. I had timed it all to the second. The prosecution asked Shepard about the supply records. He deflected. About the manipulated logs. He denied. His tone never changed. He leaned on his rank, his years of service, his spotless record. To the casual ear, he almost sounded believable. But I wasn't listening for the truth. I was listening for the cracks. And they were already showing. The court officer adjusted the screen on cue. The judge gave a nod. Across the room, Shepard kept talking, not realizing that everything he said was about to fall under the shadow of hard data. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe. The moment was coiled, ready to strike. The storm hadn't hit yet. But everyone in that room was about to learn what silence sounds like, right before a wall of truth tears through the noise. The lights dimmed. A sharp click echoed as the monitor came alive. The room fell into a silence so complete, even breathing felt like an interruption. The first sound was his voice. Clear. Commanding. Unmistakable. "We just changed the count." Gasps followed. Low. Involuntary. The screen showed Shepard leaning over the private, eyes locked, voice calm like he was asking for the weather. "You sign it. You forget what you saw. That's how we run clean ops." His tone didn't waver. There was no hesitation. Just certainty. Arrogance. Wrapped in authority. The camera angle was perfect. It caught the clipboard, the false numbers, the trembling hand. It caught Shepard taking the form and walking off like he'd just wrapped up a routine drill. Time-stamped, logged, synced to the exact record submitted to the logistics chain 2 days later. Then came the overlays. Financial data, internal communications, matching voice samples. Every detail aligned. Line by line, frame by frame, lie by lie. Shepard shifted in his seat. Just a twitch at first. Then his jaw clenched. Behind me, I noticed my stepfather's gaze flicker to the shine on my boot, the one thing he always said mattered, before returning to the screen in horror. My stepmother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. My stepfather muttered something under his breath. Not a joke, but a sound of sheer panic. Ryan stared, face pale. Around Shepard, the air changed. Officers he'd once commanded wouldn't look at him. His second-in-command turned away entirely. No one spoke. The judge didn't say a word either. She just watched, eyes like iron, expression blank. The prosecution ended the playback with a single phrase. Let the record show, the witness falsified supply documentation under direct coercion. That was it. That was the crack of thunder we'd been waiting for. Shepard opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His performance was over. The mask was gone. All that remained was the truth. Cold, unedited, permanent. Shepard left the courtroom in cuffs. His career was over. The formal loss of rank and pay would follow the court's final order. The headlines called it a landmark case in military accountability. Inside the Pentagon, they called it a reckoning. His record was no longer spotless. It was a cautionary tale. He didn't speak as they read the charges. He didn't resist. There was nothing left to defend. His allies vanished. His legacy collapsed. Power, once his shield, had become the spotlight. The tension left my shoulders in a single painful exhale that I hadn't realized I was holding for weeks. A week later, I got the call. The Secretary's office wanted me to lead a new unit under the Pentagon's Office of Inspector General. Independent, high clearance, built to investigate internal threats. I accepted. Not out of ambition, but because it was necessary. When I arrived for the swearing-in, the brass stood. Some nodded, some avoided my eyes. It didn't matter. I wasn't there for applause. I was there to ensure that what happened under Shepard would never happen again. My office is quiet, clean, a different kind of command post. My desk is real wood, not composite. And the only sound is the click of my own keyboard, not the constant, low hum of the bass comms trying to pull me in 100 directions. The team I chose came from all over the service branches. Analysts, investigators, people who understood that loyalty means protecting truth, not hiding it. Eventually, my family reached out. My stepmother sent a message about reflection. My father left a voicemail full of long pauses and short sentences. Ryan didn't say anything, but I saw him watching me during a veterans ceremony. Eyes low, hands fidgeting. I didn't block them, but I needed the quiet more than I needed their attempts at closure. If they were waiting for forgiveness, they misunderstood what this was all about. I never needed their belief to become who I am. As I left that chapter behind, I said it once, quietly, to no one in particular. It was never about proving myself to you. And I meant it. Real power doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for applause or beg for recognition. It grows quietly, in long nights and hard choices, in doing what's right even when no one's watching. I used to think I needed my family to see me, to finally say they were proud. But I've learned you don't need their permission to be whole. You don't need their validation to lead, to rise, to matter. Shepard taught me that abuse of power doesn't always wear a uniform. Sometimes it wears a smile, and sometimes it's sitting across your dinner table. So if you've ever been underestimated, ignored, or made to feel small, I want you to know this. Your strength is real, even when it's quiet. And sometimes, The most powerful thing you can do is keep going anyway. If you've been through something similar, feel free to share your story in the comments. I read every word, because stories like yours, like ours, are what shift the ground beneath old systems. Not with noise, but with truth.